Welcome back to Respect the Process. I am Kelly Hunter, and I am joined by my ever-faithful friend, Chris Stewart, who is coming to us from God's country, because if the Lord didn't like Carolina, he would not have made it Tar Heel Blue. How are you?
Very nice. I'm really good, and I'm
Good.
about as Carolina as it gets. I'm talking to you from the lobby of the Carolina Inn, beautiful hotel here in Chapel Hill, right on campus and
Is it true that
near
both
campus, I
that both
should say.
Alabama and Auburn are staying there?
All right, so we're not staying at this hotel. Met some
Okay.
friends
Okay.
for lunch,
Gotcha.
moved away from that. But yes,
Okay.
we both stayed at the Sheraton Hotel. It was very similar to frankly, the first round of the NCAA tournament last year when both the Tide and the Tigers shipped all the way literally across country
Right.
to play in the Spokane Regional, and yet we were in the same hotel. It's crazy, but yeah, we did saw Stephen Pearl last night. Spoke to him for a couple of minutes, and some other friends from Auburn. So it was good to see them. Wish them luck, and could genuinely mean it, because this is pretty big. The SEC's gotten off to a
Yeah.
great start in this challenge deal. And as you and I are talking now, our games are to take place, but I think it was 9-1 in favor of
Yeah.
the SEC after day one with, those deadbeats from Kentucky.
Yeah.
I'm joking, Big Blue fans. I know you've carried us for years. But, yeah, it's kind of ironic. Kentucky losing it at Clemson is the only loss for the SEC in that challenge so far.
Well, we'll get more into the SEC ACC Men's Challenge. What is it? Brought to you by Continental? No. What is it?
Who knows?
I don't know.
Who knows?
It's brought to you by
They
somebody.
ain't
I'm
paying
not getting
us.
any
Why are
money
we
out of it,
worried?
so yeah.
They ain't paying us.
Okay, so before we move on, last weekend, a lot of emotion in the Alabama-Auburn game, and I think for a lot of fans it saw that this team still has a lot of fight in it, and just got the job done.
No question. It was the Iron Bowl. You knew that it was going to be hard fought on both sides, and thankfully Alabama harnessed it a little bit better. I think Alabama's the more talented team this year. We knew that going in, but there wasn't such a disparity that if Bama, didn't play well, I started to say if Bama didn't make mistakes, that they'd be able to feel good about the game. The reality is, as many times as they turned it over, some key penalties, that could have been a very different ball game.
Yeah.
And yet with the miscues, you still had the lead at half. I thought it was the best of Jalen Milroe and some of the issues that have kept him from being probably a Heisman winner this year, or in the real serious talk for that. Just didn't do things consistently enough, but he made enough big plays and was a leader in that ball game, and excited to see him do well and to see Alabama find a way to get the win. It was obviously one that, I know we'll get into this, has put them in a great position for the college football playoff, or back in the conversation at a minimum. And we'll see how that all plays out. But it was a great win that stood on its own because it was the Iron Bowl. I'm glad they were able to get it done.
Yeah. Okay, because we need to talk about it. The most recent round of the CFP, which means it's the most important one, and it will be the last one of the made-for-TV events, because last night, just when you thought they were out, they're back in. The most interesting thing that we found out last night, coming out of last night's information, was that Miami, Ole Miss, South Carolina, they are out. They will not be able to jump Alabama. They are not playing this weekend, so they are done. Now, Ward Manuel, who has been the spokesperson for the CFP, saying in his defense that Alabama jumping over Miami, they are 3-1 against current top 25 teams. Miami's 0-1. Alabama is 6-1 versus teams above 500. Miami's 4-2. They both have had some losses, but in the last 3 games, Miami has lost twice. So obviously that tells me if you're going to lose early.
No argument on that point, or that statement, although South Carolina goes, wait a minute, we did practically all of our losing early. We won our last 6 games in a row. And
but the problem is the two teams they lost to are sitting in front of them. So that's
no question.
Yep.
No question. I'm not shocked that Alabama's in, based on what we're looking at today.
Right.
And we know that when they vote again, they go through the process again, reevaluate whatever they do. Um, could they change their mind on some things? Kelly, frankly, you probably know more about that than I do. But the truth is, it's a whole lot better spot than we thought we might be in or that we could have been in. I think Alabama's capable of, if it plays out, going to South Bend, winning, going to either Arizona or to Atlanta and winning and putting themselves in a spot where they could play for the whole thing. Yeah, I think they're really capable of that. Do we also know that they could go and lose? Absolutely. If you play like you did against Oklahoma, put us in and let's see what happens. As a college football fan, you put Alabama and Notre Dame in prime time in possibly snowy South Bend, Indiana. That's got gazillion eyeballs that'll be tuned into that one to watch. Because whether you're a fan of either one or you hate both, people are still going to want to watch.
Well, and that's, you have to keep in mind exactly what so much that gets lost in this. It's a business. This also comes down to dollars. And when you look at Alabama, in many ways, they're a national team. At the university currently,
in every way, they're a national team.
When I was touring the school with my daughter this past summer, they're giving you all the facts and statistics. Alabama has 60% of students from out of state. So that tells me that a lot of kids are coming to Alabama, and in a large part for football. So this is a national team. I think for the rest of the country and for the rest of college football fans, a lot of times they see Alabama as like the version of the Kansas City Chiefs. And they feel like that, well, the College Football Playoff Committee is going to do whatever it takes because Alabama, people are going to watch them.
Right. And look, they're not going to do that unless things are equal. And or very close to equal. And does Alabama get the benefit of the doubt because of the attraction and the following and what it means in ratings? Absolutely it does. Hey, let's be real clear on something, Kelly. If this were back in the, I don't know, mid-'80s through, or if you're talking about a period of the early through late 80s, or maybe even the mid-'90s, you're probably taking Miami, or they were taking Miami over Alabama for the very same reason that we're talking about Alabama being taken. Yes, there's the historic factor, but there's also the recent history piece of this. And it does favor the Crimson Tide with what they've been doing, with who they are, with what the reach is. But you and I both remember when mostly it was hate 'em. There was a percentage that loved them, but most of America loved hating Miami. And it was easy to hate Miami back then. Not only did they win, they were, as many people refer to then and now, as completely classless. They were the bad guys. They were the villains. Bama's the bad guy by and large just because people are tired of Alabama, or they've always pulled against Alabama, or they're just tired of seeing Alabama be where they are. But you can't hate Alabama for the same reasons that people hated Miami back in the day.
Right.
We remember that it was different. Miami was the villain in every sense of the word, unless you were a Miami fan. Bama's in a different spot now, and that's why people are up in arms, because they say that they're mad about Bama being there, but they still want to see Alabama in that playoff.
What's the old
They'll
Howard?
Watch. I'll put it that way.
What's the old Howard Stern that they listened? The people that hated him listened for an extra 10 minutes because they wanted to hear what he said, and the people that loved him also listened for 10 more minutes because they wanted to hear what he said. So
I told that's the analogy I started to use a few minutes ago when we started this conversation.
Okay, so the Idiot's Guide to this weekend's viewing, and bear with me now because this was an idiot putting this together this morning. So the first game, the ACC Championship, you've got SMU versus Clemson. Ideal outcome is SMU wins. SMU
Yeah,
wins.
we're SMU fans.
SMU wins. Everybody who cheers for Alabama is cheering for SMU because that bounces Clemson, and no longer then would SMU go back to the pool of at-large teams that they would then begin having to debate between Alabama, SMU, who is more worthy of that 11 spot.
Right.
Okay, so I don't think it's going to be hard for a lot of people to cheer against Dabo this weekend, but yeah, so because if the Tigers win, they win the ACC, and they're going to be, a 3-loss team that's one of the top 4 seeds. And even when asked, last night when Ward Manuel was talking, saying that they would possibly bounce the 11-2 SMU team, he would say potentially yes. So we've got that. Then the Big Ten championship, Oregon versus Penn State. Both teams are in. The only thing that really would change is if Alabama would travel to Happy Valley or would they go to Notre Dame. Would you have a preference between the two? Alabama playing at Penn State, Alabama playing at Notre Dame.
I think Bama would be I don't think Penn State's as good as Notre Dame.
I agree.
don't think Penn State would be as difficult to get past as Notre Dame will be. Frankly, I'd rather go to Notre Dame. I think you can win there as well. I think the nostalgia of that, but also I'd rather go to South Bend and State College. That's just personal preference. But I think Alabama's got a great chance of winning, and especially, think about this, the really strong likelihood of playing in Atlanta next, if you could get past that, regardless of who you're going to face. I mean, it could be SMU either in Arizona or in Atlanta, but if it's in Atlanta, you're talking about a home game.
Yeah.
There's more Bama fans, period, but you're definitely going to have more Bama fans, I would think, in Atlanta than you would SMU fans for that ball game. Plus, we've had so much success there. There's no guarantee. There's no guarantee of having success again, but there's certainly great familiarity for a lot of those guys with playing there, that venue. And for Bama fans, it would be an easy, great trip to make, and you would outnumber easily, I think, the SMU fans if you had a matchup there.
Yeah, and no question. And that's, I think, to a casual viewer, if you tell them SMU is playing versus Alabama is playing, you're going to get more attention. And I went to a mid-major. Sure. Miami of Ohio has had a hell of a season. But if you were to tell me that Miami of Ohio was playing any of these teams, that's a more difficult sell. So without question, I think that's the hardest part, and that's going to be the business end of what the college football playoff doesn't want to have to talk about, but what is the reality of the situation.
Here's the other part that's going to be really interesting to watch too. How many SEC teams, when they do that bracket, how many SEC teams are they going to stack up against each other? Yeah. Like if let's say you're Alabama.
Go ahead and knock them out.
How many SEC teams might you have to play in order to get to the semis or the finals? Because you can absolutely see them wanting to, we're going to put 4 of you in, but we're going to minimize how many of you can actually get to the championship. Because the last thing we want is having SEC versus SEC again in the championship game.
But I also think what they're going to be looking at is they're going to have some great first round matchups. It's then the second round matchups that we have to talk about to, I mean, and they're looking at the whole thing. I know that they have to be just looking past the first round with home games at those host sites. So second round as well as championship games. I mean, you look back at the TCU year. That's not what college football is looking for.
No, it's not. You don't want but you run the risk of that in the championships if these brackets hold up. I mean, Arizona State going from technically a 15th ranked team to being one that gets a bye.
Yeah.
Just because the way the league plays out. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to say the least.
You bring up the Big 12. We have Arizona State taking on Iowa State. The college football playoff rankings, both of them are behind Alabama, so the winner stays in and the loser is out completely. Mountain West, Boise State, and UNLV playing each other. Similar to the ACC, A Boise State win, and it keeps everything in line for Alabama. A UNLV win,
Right.
and again, then you've got the debate of Boise State.
Right. You do. I still don't see them putting a Boise in over Alabama or jumping them. Where's Boise right now? 10th, 9th?
I can't tell. Let's try to see.
I think it's. I think
10.
It was.
Thank you, Scott.
It was 10.
10.
Yeah.
See?
They will absolutely, despite all the conversation about not punishing a team that loses in the league championship game, they're absolutely going to punish Boise. Because you're right, they're only going to take one team from that league. And if they're only one spot ahead of Alabama, then you could absolutely make the argument that the runner-up in their league doesn't deserve to be ahead of the fourth place team in the Southeastern Conference, regardless of who that team happens to be.
And then, if you know, in the American, you've got Tulane and Army, and that goes back to the automatic for the group of 5 spot. Okay, finally, SEC Championship, Texas, home team in Atlanta, hosting the Georgia Bulldogs. Tide fans are cheering for the Dogs this weekend because the crown jewel is the fact that they have beaten Georgia.
It doesn't hurt. I just don't believe, Kelly, it's going to matter that much. If there's going to be the true comparison, I think it's going to be the comparison of what happens with the SMU matchup in the ACC with Clemson. That one, to me, will have a greater impact than what happens. Because here's the thing. The committee wants to put Alabama in. I think Alabama's worthy of being in. Okay? But the committee wants to put Alabama in. The reason they would love to see that is it helps them make their argument. I don't think it's going to affect what they do. I think it will help their argument, though, if those things we've talked about hold serve. SMU beating Clemson and the other one that you mentioned, Georgia actually beating Texas. But I don't think the winner of Texas-Georgia is truly going to impact whether or not Alabama gets in.
I'm curious, and I know it's going on, back channeling, trying to having people at higher levels talk to folks on the college football committee, and I'm sure it's for every conference, for every team. And of the 13 members, I was looking today, Mike Riley, who is a former coach, he coached Oregon State, Nebraska, and he played for Bear Bryant. So you have to hope that maybe Mike Riley is still smiling upon his days at Alabama and would like to see them play. But I was looking at it. Is interesting. You have 6 current athletic directors, 4 former coaches, 2 former players, and 1 former media member. For what it's worth. Okay. So the first ever team playoff field will be announced Sunday morning at 11 a.m. Central Time. So if you're sitting in church and make an audible gasp, just, say the Spirit of the Lord came over you.
It may not be what the preacher said. It may be what the head of the committee says.
All the
or Reese Davis.
That's right. Can the congregation say amen?
Yes,
turning to basketball, where you are in Chapel Hill, we have the number 20 and the number 20 Carolina Tar Heels hosting the number 10 Crimson Tide. Alabama coming in off of a tough loss in Las Vegas, and it wasn't just the loss in the game Saturday night that kept them up. We found out yesterday about Latrell Wrightsel's that it was in fact an Achilles tendon rupture.
Right, and look, he's a huge loss. Great shooter, great person, great leader, a guy that the others really respect. The way he's fought through injuries from end of last year. We had the multiple
even beginning of this
concussions.
season,
no question, and was delayed again with a leg problem. But it
was his other leg.
He was playing he was playing so well, and it's just a shame for him personally. Now, the hope is that NCAA will grant him the red shirt. He'll be able to come back next year and be a part of it. But for right now, just from a basketball standpoint, it's a huge loss. But there is so much depth on this team that they're built. In the past, I would have said losing a Latrell Wrightsell is devastating for your team. And while you hate it for him, and it's not a good thing by any stretch to lose him, you're at least built better to handle the loss than we've been, or that most teams would be, because of the depth of the guard slot. And, we haven't even talked about the fact that, you've got guys that you got a Chris Youngblood who's going to be coming back from injury at some point soon, possibly as soon as the game against North Carolina, although I really think there's a better chance of seeing him for the Creighton game. But as you're looking at the big picture, he's a huge part of this roster going forward. A guy who was a conference player of the year in 2 different leagues. He's a fantastic shooter. He's also tough, great size for a guard, 6'4", I think 220, 225 maybe. He's a big-time player, and you haven't even had him yet. So, and again, there's other options as well.
Jaren Stevenson, Aiden Holloway, a couple guys that this is an opportunity to step up, even to get Mark Sears more in step with what we had seen from him last year.
Yeah, and again, there's a lot of options that Nate Oats has available to him, and nobody's going to feel sorry for Alabama. And I think by the time we get through the month of December and we're starting to flip towards January, this is going to be a team that even with the loss of Latrell, as much as I hate to see him not able to be a part of this and not have him be involved, I think this team's going to be in great shape.
I just keep hearing the Mike Dubose loop of a tremendous challenge and a tremendous opportunity. Whenever we you
did not hear that.
I know, but I just hear.
But I get where you're coming from.
Okay, so tonight, have you ever called a game in the Dean Dome?
I have not done one from the Dean Dome. This will be a first, and I'm excited about it. Saw it yesterday. It's a beautiful building. Even though it's so funny, I still remember coming to this part, coming to the Tobacco Road. We being Alabama, when Mark Gottfried was still the head coach. We actually played North Carolina State on like a Wednesday night and flew in on a Tuesday. Somebody had tickets for us. We could go to Cameron and see Duke play somebody wasn't very good in December, or could go to Chapel Hill and see UNC in their relatively new building. I don't think it was 5 years old at the time. Play somebody that wasn't very good. And because of the history, chose to go to Duke and see Cameron. I'm glad we did. It was one of the few times, I guess, that I've seen Coach K, the only time I've seen him coach in that building. So I was glad I chose that, but I'm really excited about the chance to see a North Carolina game. I'm even more excited about the fact that it's Alabama. It's going in as the higher ranked team. They've had success in some absolutely legendary games against the Tar Heels the last few years. So this will be a fun experience up until tip off, and then you better be ready to go.
Exactly.
Carolina's had a week off. Alabama's just flying back from
that's
Vegas,
what I was going to say. They've
tough grind.
The road game is becoming unusual after this past week and spending the week out in Las Vegas. But the interesting thing is, after this game, they have about a 10-day stretch off, which is the longest amount of time they'll have until April. So let's grind it out tonight. Let's try and get business taken care of. Come home, kind of retool, refit everything, look at how we are, and figure out how we're going to attack the rest of this season.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's tough to bounce back physically, but it should be a whole lot easier given who you're playing, where you're playing, and knowing that the last time you faced this group was in the Sweet 16, and they feel like they owe you. I mean, Alabama's won, I think, the last 3 meetings in the matchup, at least the last 3 in their most recent meetings with Carolina. So there's a lot, and it's the national game. And just from a state standpoint, you've got our game going at 6:15 Central. You've got the Auburn Duke game coming up after that, and it's a heck of a deal, man. That Alabama is ranked higher than North Carolina. Auburn's ranked higher than all of us right now, being at number 2 in the country, but Auburn being ranked ahead of Duke. And it's crazy that both the Tide and the Tigers are here on Tobacco Road at the same time, games the same night. against two legendary programs, and both of the Alabama schools are ranked higher. But not surprising, both of the Carolina schools are favored according to those that look at such things in Las Vegas.
Y'all should have just traveled together, or gotten in a van
I
or
don't think
something.
that'd been a good idea.
Is this the first basketball game you've called this year?
No, I did a couple of games at home. We did the McNeese game.
Oh,
I
that's
did
right.
the opener as well with, I think it was Liberty, maybe. Can't remember. But it's been a while. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah,
It's the first time you've been on the road with them.
See the team. It is. You're exactly right. I reintroduced myself to Coach Oats and in jest, and I'm just glad I got a chance to see him.
I'm Chris.
Flew out with the team.
Talking about your team tonight.
Flew out with the team and ready to be there.
Nice. Everybody travel well? No fights?
They were. I'm not going to go that route. Everything was kumbaya. It was fine.
All right. Okay. Well, fine. You can dodge questions all you want, but and then
it doesn't affect me. And again, that was another team, but it hadn't apparently impacted that team too bad.
They're doing okay.
Things are doing just fine for them.
Okay. So after Carolina, the Tide takes about a 10-day rest, and there are no favors because they've got a dangerous Creighton team that comes in on Saturday, December 14th. Yeah. And after that, a couple more, and then we get into conference play. All right. Well, we're going to hopelessly watch this weekend. I know you will have some time to watch yourself, which you don't always have a lot of Saturdays to be able to sit around and watch football. Or will you be doing other things this weekend?
Got a couple of things on the docket. I got a little.
You got your tree up
with the kids. The tree is. All the decorations have been identified.
Okay.
They just have not been all placed yet, but that will be handled hopefully by Sunday.
Because while you were gone, they came and they've decorated the studio now.
I love what you've done with the place.
Yeah,
it looks fantastic.
I didn't. They asked me not to touch everything, as a matter of fact. So that's just
probably a good move.
Everything on the wall. Okay, so we will helplessly watch again. The college football playoff release is the inaugural 12 teams on Sunday at 11, and both Chris and I are confident that Alabama will find its way in. I think there will be greater outrage if they don't.
They like conversation, they being the committee, so we'll see what it looks like. But
well,
you're right.
I mean, that's the thing is I think before we go, I think that the committee would love to see Clemson win and then send things into chaos.
So I don't think they would.
Okay.
I don't think they would like to see that, because I think they would like it to be. I think they would like to see it status quo from this point forward.
Okay. Can I submit?
ABC, ESPN, that's a different story.
Okay. I'll submit your name for next year to be on the committee or even be the spokesperson.
Just let me pick all of it. Forget the committee.
That's right.
Make it a dictatorship and let me choose it.
Exactly. I mean, that's what everybody wants, your opinion
I'll tell you
anyways.
who the number ones. I know Alabama would be the number one seed. I promise you that.
Well, in the future, when there's just when it's streamlined and they've kind of figured these things out, and it's the field of 16, why don't we have just two automatics, like an SEC and a Big Ten, and be done with it?
As soon as they go to 16, the argument's going to start to go to 32, and we'll go from there.
We'll play right into 8A game.
We got 68 in basketball, and we still argue that every year.
Exactly.
It's not going to matter. However you put in, whoever gets left out is going to be complaining. That's the way it happens.
If you're looking for more of Chris, or you need to hear more of Chris, you can always find him at chrisstewart.online. I haven't said it enough this year, but there are 2 S's in chrisstewart.online. So you need to remember that if you're looking for him. An immense and heartfelt thanks to Scott Forrester for saying yes when he should so often say no to us and our many requests that we have for him. Thanks, Tyler. Thanks, Reed. Thanks, Tim. Thanks to everybody up here. You can catch everything you need for Alabama at Cover Crimson, as well as every single day with Next Round Live. You can find them. I think they even give you their home numbers if you have any questions for them. But before we go, I am Kelly Hunter. This is Chris Stewart. He is in Chapel Hill. And before we go, Chris,
roll Tide.
We'll see y'all next week. Take care.